Letters to shareholders are an underrated art form. Most people don't consider them art because they're financial technical writing, but there's a large opportunity space for beautiful words and elegant ideas. If accounting is the language of business, letters to shareholders are its poetry. The shining example of the art of letters to shareholders is Jeff Bezos' 1997 Amazon.com Incorporated letter to shareholders. And I'm sure by the end of this video you'll understand why it's one of my favorite works overall. To give you some background, letters to shareholders are optional for companies and do not usually exist. Unlike other financial statements, for example annual or quarterly reports, they're generally letters written to tell shareholders about the company, often including sections where the CEO tells everyone about how great they are because they support inclusivity, diversity, and environmental concerns. But Jeff Bezos' 1997 letter to shareholders is different. A letter to shareholders is usually a collage of stock photos and corporate buzzwords, but Amazon's letter to shareholders are heartfelt letters written by the Bezos himself that convince you that his company is amazing in a number of different ways. He says that his company is doing the best it possibly could using primarily hard data. Misleading people on this type of shareholder communication can put you in jail in extreme cases, so he really believes this. The 1997 original letter to shareholders was written in a time where most people have not heard of the internet. He literally says, "This is day one for the internet," which he proceeds to say for several years afterwards, but it is day one. Amazon.com uses the internet to create real value for its customers is another verbatim phrase that he uses because he believes in the company. The people reading this were expected not to know that the internet could provide more convenience or selection than the alternative, and Jeff Bezos needs to communicate this through his letters, and he does a pretty good job, I think. He also makes an argument that Amazon's current profitability does not matter. He was really focused on the long term, and in fact, Amazon didn't make any profit until rather recently, a few years ago. The letter explains Amazon's strategy of trying to get market dominance so that they will be able to have higher profitability in the future. Things like warehouse space, inventory costs, and infrastructure are cheaper when you can buy them in bulk, especially considering that their custom warehousing software, website design, and marketing tactics only need one copy, whether they had one small warehouse or many large ones. This strategy worked incredibly well. From 1995 to 2001, the company was very unprofitable, making operating losses every single year. But from 2002 onwards, the company had an operating profit every single year. Operating profit is the profitability of the core business, disregarding debt and other unrelated activities. He goes on to explain that the company itself was optimizing at the time for customer and revenue growth, and still is to a large extent. He, however, does not mention at all the extreme tax benefits of his growth instead of profit strategy. In simplest terms, companies are taxed on profits, not growth. Mr. Bezos then gives a very thorough and concise explanation of the company's goals and approach to doing business. Most letters to shareholders will go something like, "We love our 600,000 talented workers, though we don't give them healthcare benefits, overtime, or fair pay, and create 360-degree value for all stakeholders," without explaining what the company does, much less its goals. The clarity is what makes the 1997 Amazon letter to shareholders the best ever letter to shareholders that I've ever seen, by a large margin. Mr. Bezos uses words that the vast majority of accountants, tax lawyers, financial professionals, and skilled business people are familiar with, instead of the far more commonly used company-specific buzzwords. Rather than saying what the business is doing or patting himself on the back for past history, he teaches you how to run a business by giving you important, relevant tips, possibly inspired by the Berkshire Hathaway letters to shareholders, famous for doing the same thing. Instead of congratulating his company for being the best and then highlighting only the best figures, he asks you if his company philosophy lines up with your investment philosophy. Here are the company's philosophy bullet points that he included. These are meant to illustrate the nature of the 1997 letter. If you care what they are, read the letter after you finish the video. So the company philosophy approach bullet points are: 1. Discard short-term profitability for the long term. 2. Discard strategies that do not provide acceptable returns. 3. Make bold rather than timid investment decisions when they have a higher expected return. With success or failure, you will learn from a bold risk. 4. Pay attention to the underlying company performance rather than how the accounting makes the company look from the outside. 5. Share the thought process with shareholders when making bold decisions. 6. Maintain a, quote, lean culture, unquote, which is his way of saying that he's a cheap bastard. 7. Focus on growth, long-term profitability, and capital management. 8. Focus on hiring and retaining versatile and talented employees. Amazon headquarters has windows that open because apparently his employees like fresh air. Weight employee compensation with stock options rather than cash. Jeff Bezos seems to only want people to buy his stock if they think like him, which is a strong sales tactic to sell shares of stock. Back in 1997, internet speeds were universally slow, so in order to give customers a compelling offering, Amazon gave them extreme variety. They then added the convenience of one-click, an innovative feature at the time, user reviews, recommendation features, etc., etc. He then goes on to the highlights of the year, which is pretty standard for letters to shareholders, except the numbers here are absurdly high. 838% increase in sales, 738% increase in number of users, and so on. There are two of these sections, which are usually half of a quarterly report, but it's less than a page in total for this one. There's a section in the letter to shareholders praising the company's employees. Most letters to shareholders have a section like this. What separates this section from other letters to shareholders is how Jeff intimately describes how hard he works to his employees. He mentions that during interviews he tells employees you can work hard, long, or smart, but at Amazon.com you can't choose 2 out of 3, to warn them that they're going to have to put everything into it. He also mentions employee dedication, passion, and sacrifice. The employee report sections of shareholder letters usually list dedication, but generally not passion or sacrifice. As an investor, this makes me think that the employees are really devoted to the company, which is great, but sacrifice sounds a little grim, and years later it has been uncovered that Amazon sometimes has problems overworking its employees. The letter then did something revolutionary. They shared their future plans. You might think that this is kind of basic, but I almost never see it in letters to shareholders. As you would expect from a future plans section, they planned on making progress on their 8 goals from the company philosophy section, as you'd expect. They plan to add music as a product offering, which they did the very next year in 1998, since they were starting to sell things other than books, and music was a logical next step. They identified the big challenge, which was prioritizing investments, which I usually see buried in an annual report or something, but it's nice to see it clearly in a better location, which makes more organizational sense. There's a paragraph where he says, more or less, we learned a lot since Amazon was founded, but there's still a lot to learn, so we need to remain vigilant. This is pretty bold, since most letters to shareholders say, more or less, our company knows a lot. Please trust us and give us money. I appreciate the humbleness there. As a final note, he thanks customers and shareholders. Usually I would assume this is just him being polite, but since he did not use any formalities elsewhere, and since Jeff Bezos seems to care about customers and only customers, it's probably very genuine. If his wife wanted their marriage to last, she simply should have bought more stuff on Amazon. This letter is only 5 pages and has more business knowledge in it than I've learned in school. It's an invaluable historical document that tells you everything you need to know about the roots of one of the most influential companies of our era. And in only 5 pages, very well written, solid, and clear information. All of this from someone named Jeffrey. Unbelievable. If you ever want to get into reading letters to shareholders, I highly recommend the 1997 Amazon Letter to Shareholders by Jeffrey P. Bezos, founder and chief executive officer of Amazon.com Incorporated, formerly Cadabra Incorporated from 1994 to 1995. You can find the letter on Amazon's investor relation page on https://ir.about amazon.com/annual-report/properties-and-letters/default.aspx. Yes, I read that. No, you're not getting a link. Fuck you. I do recommend reading it, though. Maybe you want to do investing or something. I don't know. Mwah. Bye, everyone. Please comment. I think that letters to shareholders are art, and also my favorite art form. And also Jefferson Peanut Bezos is my favorite author in the comments section down below. Thanks for watching. Mwah. Bye.